welcome everyone to this virtual broadcast of our Good Friday service here in Milwaukee. And I wanted to open with scripture in the way of a prayer. Right before this passage that I'm going to read in Matthew, Jesus asked his disciples, he said, "Who do you think I am?" And of course they gave him different responses. Some say you're John the Baptist, some say you're Elijah, others say Jeremiah. But then he looked at them and he said, but how about you? Who do you think I am? And Peter's response was, you're the Messiah. You're the Son of the living God. And that's why we're here. That's why we desire to allow everyone to hear the message of the cross, the message of Jesus Christ, that God, only you are worthy. Jesus, you are the Messiah. You are the Son of the living God. It was interesting this morning, looking at the news, I'm sure like everybody does every day to find out what's going on. The Associated Press said this: in a test of faith, Christians mark Good Friday in isolation. And I thought about that, and I thought how fitting that is for today. How fitting that is for Good Friday. That Christians mark Good Friday in isolation. That describes that there is God, and then here we are. And God loved us, and this was the purpose of the cross. Jesus also began to tell his disciples, this is from Matthew 16, he began to tell his disciples plainly that it was necessary for him, it was a must to go to Jerusalem, that it was a must that he would suffer terrible things at the hands of the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of the religious law, that he must be killed, but that on the third day he would be raised from the dead. It was interesting, Peter took him aside and he began to reprimand him for saying such things. He said, "Heaven forbid, Lord, this will never happen to you." And Jesus turned to Peter and he said, "Get out of my way, Satan, for you are a dangerous trap to me. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's." And I think that's what happened on Good Friday. I know that's what happened on Good Friday. There was God, and then there was humankind, mankind. Jesus predicted this day. And when the disciples and the crowds were looking at this day, this act of God, they looked at it from a human point of view. In fact, the truth was that they would deny him. The truth was that they would fall asleep when he asked them to pray. The fact is that they would desert him. And on the road to the cross, when they were asked to keep watch when Jesus was suffering because they knew of what he had to do, they fell asleep. The other text that I want to read this morning is from Mark 14, verse 27 and 31. And on the way, Jesus told them, "All of you will desert me. For the scripture says, God will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But after I am raised from the dead, I will go ahead of you to Galilee and meet you there." And again, Peter said to him, he said, "Even if everyone else deserts you, I never will." And Jesus replied, "I tell you the truth, Peter, this very night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. You will deny that you even knew me." and all the others vowed the same. You see, there was a difference. You know, the world and the disciples were thinking from a human's point of view. They didn't look at this as a God Friday. They looked at it from a human's point of view. Jesus absolutely knew that he must go to the cross in order to provide salvation for the world. That's why Jesus used the word must. He must go to Jerusalem. He must suffer. He must die. And he must rise from the dead. Nothing would happen by chance. Even the fierce and the hatred of the Jewish leaders fulfilled God's will in this plan. Nothing was contingent in the mind of God about the death of his Son. That's why the Bible speaks of him as a lamb slain before the foundation of the world. It's interesting, in a text I read from the internet, I don't have an author for this, it was just out there, but it says that Jesus, during this time before the cross, he never swerved. When Peter told him that would never happen, he said to Peter, "Get out of my way, get lost. You have no idea how God is working." That's a good way to put it, because Peter, at that point, had no idea what was going to happen, even though Jesus had told him. You see, to Peter, the cross was evidence of failure. To Jesus, the cross was the purpose for which he came to this earth. To Peter, the cross meant that Jesus had been defeated. But to Jesus, the cross meant a way to defeat Satan and the evil of this world. To Peter, the cross meant that evil had won the day, but not to Jesus. To Jesus, the cross was the path to final victory over sin. To Peter, the cross meant that Jesus was gone forever. To Jesus, the cross led to the empty tomb. To Peter, the cross was a badge of shame. And to Jesus, the cross brought salvation to the world. To Peter, the cross meant that they had no message to preach. To Jesus, the cross became the message that they did preach. To Peter, the cross really meant no sense. But to Jesus, the cross displayed the wonderful wisdom and love of God. There was Jesus on the cross that day, and he looked down at all of us as humans, the crowds, his followers, you and I, and the sin of the world. And he said, "Father, forgive them." That's what he said. "Father, forgive them." You see, it was the sin of the world that was holding him there. And then he said this. He said, "Father, I entrust my spirit into your hands." And it says he breathed his last. It was Friday. It was Good Friday. It was God Friday. The story doesn't end there, and I just want to let you know, Tony Campolo, from a pastor that he heard, developed a sermon that said, yes, it's Friday, but Sunday's coming. God bless you all. Have a good day.